Hi guys, welcome back to Mongrels Garage. We're going to go through some differences in the Hemi engines, the pre-Eagle and the post-Eagle engine, and also go through some of the different styles you'll find in the trucks specifically. These are 5.7 engines. Remember to hit the subscribe and leave some comments, ring the bell, that lets you know when we have more content. So let's get started. Right here we have two engines. This one is the pre-Eagle engine, 5.7 liter. And you can find this in the Dodge trucks, the Chargers, the Challengers, and the 300s, Magnums, okay, all that type of thing. And this ran from 2003 in the trucks to 2008. And then when the cars got introduced, like the Charger and the Magnum came out in 2005, Charger came out in 2006. Okay. So, and then it would have ran in those cars from there, the Challenger. This engine, this is a 5.7 Eagle. You can tell the difference. These are both kind of a truck. This has the single runner intake, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a minute. Okay. This has the dual runner intake, so it can switch between short and long runners. And I've actually got a broken intake here, so I can kind of show you how that works.
So what is the run? What does that mean?
Well, the run is the distance the air, once it comes into the intake, has to travel to get down to the cylinders. Oh, okay. Long runners help torque production. Short runners, when you're getting the RPM up there, you want to pump the air through as fast as you can, cram it in as fast as you can. So you want the shortest path. So that helps with high revving and horsepower. Okay. Okay, so the newer stuff, the Eagle engines, are actually able to switch between long and short runners. And they do it with these little doors here. And you can see how they actuate, and there's a little motor called the short runner valve on the back of this. And this one doesn't have it right now, but we'll show it to you later on that one because it does have it. And it's got a little motor in it, drives that, switches the runners.
Just and like is that all computer driven?
Yeah, it's all handled by the computer.
Maybe explain the length. So when it's open, when it's closed, it's long run?
Correct. When they're closed, they're a longer run. When they're open, it's a short run.
So that's one advantage. Now, how much of an advantage in horsepower does that create?
I can't give you specific numbers, but it's actually fairly significant. It's more torque advantage than horsepower.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, I suppose because it's shorter. They have the long one normal.
Down low, at low RPM, you want the torque for pulling trailers and getting off the line and stuff like that. The higher RPMs, you want the horsepower. So that is the best of both worlds. That's one of the reasons I really like these engines, is because it just...
And this switched in 2009?
2009,
And do they still use it?
Absolutely.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So it's obviously a winner of a motor.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's a very good. These cylinder heads actually flow as good as most race engines. Like I think they're up around 330 some odd CFM. Like they pump the air through unbelievably well. You know, actually these cylinder heads, while they look very similar, these are a little bit taller. So, and you can change them, but there's quite a few caveats. You can put these newer cylinder heads on the older engine. But there's some caveats to that, and I don't know if I'll get into that on this video series, but you need to use a thicker head gasket and change your push rod lengths and stuff like that. And the reason for that is these are a closed chamber, these are an open chamber, and we'll get into that a little bit more when we talk about the cylinder heads. I'll show you the difference between the two on the bench. And these will bring up the compression to a point where it pretty much won't be able to run on pump gas unless you put a thicker gasket in there and drop the compression back down. But that's getting a little detailed for what we want right now.
Is there any other differences?
Oh yeah, there's actually very little parts that interchange between these two engines. And we'll get right into that. And I'll take off this intake and I'll show you some of the differences. Now there you can see that.
You're gonna do that so fast.
Yeah, you can see the stepper motor there for the short runner valves. It's just a little module like that actuates between the two. If you want to grab the camera. With the intakes, we've showed you how you can tell the difference between the two trucks with the intakes. Now, if we come on over here and look at them without the intakes on them, we can show you some difference between the heads. You'll notice right here, this is a rectangular port on the pre-Eagle. Okay, Go look at the Eagle. You see, this is a square port. Much bigger volume.
Oh yeah, you see that?
And because of that, you can't really interchange the intakes, not without some type of an adapter. So if you're gonna run the heads from the one engine and put them on the older engine, you're gonna have to get the intake that'll work with it too. That's not the only difference. If you go down and take a look at the exhaust ports on that,
Seems square.
it seems square, doesn't it? On the Eagle engine, they're a D port, kind of a sideways D shape. So that's a couple of the differences. Now, Mike and I kind of did one of our favorite things. We went shopping. I mean, our shopping's a little bit different than other people's shopping. And we got our 2-for-1 deal on a couple Eagle engines. And we got them from one of our favorite auto recyclers, which we'll put a link down below so you can go give them some business. They're really good. They've helped me out lots.
Good fair price, eh?
Yeah, they're really fair, very good to deal with. So one of the things I'd like to challenge the viewers is, can you tell one of these engines came out of a Ram 2500, and we got the other one over there on the stand, okay? One of them came out of Ram 1500. Can you tell by looking at the engine which one came out of what? I'm not going to tell you. I want you to answer, and I'll give it away in a little while, and maybe in a future video. Okay, and I'll show you what the dead giveaway is to tell which came out of what. Another difference that I want to show you between the pre and post here. Okay, let's say you didn't have the cylinder heads on, and you're trying to look at it, identify what is this? What is it, a pre or is it an Eagle engine? You look right here on the Eagle engines, they have what's called the cam phaser. The pre-Eagle engines do not have a cam phaser. What is a cam phaser? Well, what that does is it's designed for adjusting the torque production versus horsepower production. So when you're on the bottom end, you want the timing to retard a little bit, and that'll help with the torque production. Top end, you want it advanced. Again, we're trying to rev that thing up as fast as we can and make the power as fast as we can. So you want to advance your timing curve a little bit. That helps make more power. Okay, and that's what that does, is it indexes the cam to a retard or a advanced position so that the engine makes optimal power. I mean, I love these things. They're really, really good. One of my favorite engines by far.
And the computer does that again?
Absolutely.
And does it do it on the fly?
Absolutely. You betcha. It's smooth and it's seamless.
So if you're pulling up a hill or putting the foot down, it will adjust?
It'll adjust the intake runners and the cam indexing to whatever the optimal point is. It'll make peak power all the time.
What are the differences between horsepower between the pre and post?
Well, that's an excellent question. So I do believe in stock trim, the pre-engine made about 345 horsepower. I think it's just over. It's pretty stout, yeah. And it did vary depending on whether it was in the truck or the car. Now, this guy in the truck, I believe the stock engine made 390 horsepower, 410 foot-pounds of torque.
Okay.
So it actually.
So that's 15% or so.
Oh yeah, it makes a fair bit more, and it's definitely noticeable. As when you watch our charger video, actually we have to do that yet, Mike.
What's that?
You and I did it, but we didn't film it. We took the two chargers out and took them down the road.
Oh yeah. Well, no one was there to film us.
Yeah, so maybe we'll film something like that for all you guys and show you the difference between. And not to mention that 2007 Charger, that thing was tuned up a bit. You know that. It's got the cold air intake.
That's true, yeah.
Aftermarket exhaust. It's supposed to be putting down a little more power than stock. Yep. And it still did not beat the 2011 Charger. They were both all-wheel drive. Now, it was close.
Yeah.
It was definitely close. They both optioned out very similar, so they should be very close to around the same weight. But the 2011 still won.
Yep.
And the 2011 still used the NAG 1 transmission in it, so the both should be geared the same, all that good stuff.
Okay.
But as you can see, that engine just performed a little bit better, right? And not to mention that the 2011 has a lot more miles on it.
Is that right?
Oh,
yeah, that's right. In your
it's got at least 100,000 kilometers more, so about 60,000 more miles on it. Like that thing's over 300,000 kilometers. So
Have they done anything to the Eagle engine in the later years, the 2020,
Small
2021
little
kind of
tweaks,
thing?
but nothing major.
It's still really the same engine, eh?
It's pretty much the same. They changed the tone ring and stuff like that. So now these engines, the pre-Eagle engines, they all pretty much, there might have been two, maybe three different camshafts throughout the trucks and the cars. Okay, these ones, the Eagle engines, there's about 6 different camshafts, I believe, depending on what it was in. So there's one for the Ram 1500s, and there's a different one for the Ram 2500s. And they actually changed the exhaust duration, and they might even change the lobe separation angle a little bit. Now the cars had a different one, and then there was also the Challenger with the manual transmission actually had its own camshaft as well. So they had a few different camshafts throughout this run to kind of optimize the power for the platform it was in. Now some of them had the cylinder shut down, some of them didn't.
No, that was an option?
No, it wasn't really an option, it was dependent upon model.
Oh, I see.
So for example, the Ram, I'm going to give away the answer here. The Ram 2500 did not have the cylinder shut down. Okay, the Ram 1500 does. Okay, so that's how, and then also the manual transmission car doesn't have it.
Oh yeah, of course, that makes sense.
Okay, so it doesn't shut down to 4 cylinders because it's more of a performance model. Now you get into like the 6.4 is a different camshaft again and stuff like that. So there's a few differences, and you can actually put the 6.4 camshaft in these 5.7s, get a little more performance,
Okay.
a higher performance gas engine. They came in like the SRT.
Okay, I was just going to ask you, so when they made those crazy Challenger, like Hellcats and Demons and stuff, are they the 5.7 or are they 6.4?
No, they're a 6.2 of a supercharger.
Oh, so different again.
Different again.
Same block though?
Same architecture.
Yeah.
We're not. It's probably beefed up a little bit more.
Sure.
Because, I mean, you're talking almost 400 horsepower in this.
Yeah.
Where some of those Hellcats are putting out over 800 horsepower.
Yeah.
And monstrous torque. Okay, so they have to take a lot more abuse. So the internals are gonna be a little bit different. Now you can get these 5.7s putting out that much. You can get them over 1,000 horsepower. So.
They'll handle a supercharger?
Oh yeah.
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 Cool.
You might have to start changing a few things, but they're very similar to the LS. You can put some serious power through these things in stock form, as long as you're careful about how you do it. So these Eagle engines do have a common point of failure on them, and that's the lifters and the camshaft. So it's kind of up for debate as to what causes this. There's a theory that long idle times causes a lack of lubrication. And when we get into this engine, we'll show you why that's a theory. The other thing is to do with the oil changes and the oil losing its lubrication properties and no longer, and people not given proper oil changes to these. So it might lay in the camp, kind of both camps.
Sure.
They also upgraded the valve springs. The interesting thing, and that might have something to do with it. The interesting thing is the pre-Eagle engines, they didn't really have that problem with camshafts. They had valve
really?
seat problems.
Oh.
So on the pre-Eagle engines, if you overheated them, they would drop the valve seats.
We've seen that before.
Yeah, we've seen that a couple times. On the Eagle engines, they don't tend to drop the valve seats anymore. It's very rare. But they eat camshafts. And like I said, it's kind of some debate as to why. And it might be a mixture of both. It might be one or the other. No one's ever really nailed it down per se. So when we talk failure rate, it's actually, when you think about how many of these engines they've pumped out, it's not a very common problem, not common enough to do anything about it. It doesn't
Right.
cause a safety concern. So
the camshaft, obviously, we can't get to yet. What were you talking about? There's the other
well, here we can pull
culprit?
it's not the other culprit, but it's kind of all related. Here we can pull the lifters out and we can have a look at the lifters. That's normal lifter.
What's the MDS stand for?
Multiple displacement system. And there you can see that has that oil hole in that. This one doesn't.
Let me see. Oh yeah, okay, gotcha.
Okay. So this is your standard lifter, this is your MDS lifter, and this is what helps shut down your cylinders.
Those grooves,
That's pretty normal wear. Yeah,
Normal
that's pretty normal. And I'll actually show you something else. You can see that fits in there very loosely.
yeah, that's not.
Okay. and we'll take the MDS. So that doesn't go in.
Right.
Okay, so
hard to screw that up.
it's not impossible.
We could still do it.
You know what? I'm a firm believer in they always make a better idiot, right? I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but I just did. So, no, you can always make someone that just is determined to make it happen, right? So, is that a better way of putting it?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, now being as we've got these out and we got a lifter missing here, I strongly suspect this has fallen. This is a low mileage engine. It's got about 140,000 kilometers on it. So that's maybe
85, 90,000.
85, 90,000 miles. So it's not even 100,000 miles and it's had that failure in it. And if it is that one, the interesting thing, that might very well be carved up. Yes, it is. Now, yep, I don't know if you can see that in there.
Let me try and get it close enough. Well, I can definitely see the camshaft. Can you see the
you can
grooves? I can see
you
it.
see that. Let's compare that to like this one here.
Yeah.
See, that's nice and smooth.
Yeah,
right?
that one looks pretty smooth.
Okay, now one thing I'm going to point out right away is people often blame the failure of these on the MDS lifters. That tends to be the ones that fail. That didn't come out of the MDS hole.
No.
That was a standard lifter.
Yeah.
So, like I said, don't chalk this up to the MDS lifters. It's not necessarily the case. So, as I suspected, this needs a cam. So that's why the guy gave up on it. And we have the technology and the tools to fix that, don't we, Mike?
We do.
Now, this one also has a story behind it. This came out of the Ram 2500, and if we take a look at this, we can see that someone's got the head bolts out of this. And the story behind this one is he broke some exhaust studs. That's also a very common failure on these engines.
Oh.
So and we've seen that a couple of times.
We have.
Dealt with it a few times. And they didn't want to deal with it, so they basically traded the cylinder heads.
Oh, I see.
So he got some cylinder heads where he can get the exhaust studs weren't broken, and we got the cylinder heads with the broken bottom end still in good shape.
Good.
So, but like I said, this is a Ram 2500. So if we want to put this in a car or a truck, and as I mentioned earlier, they have different camshafts. So now we can put a different cam in here, but if we want all the systems to work, we're going to have to get the solenoids in there as well. And this, we just take the plugs out, put the solenoids in. And I say just, but these things are a huge pain in the butt. I mean, I have gone through some nightmare of a time to get these out. Best thing you can do, solenoids or plugs, is you give them a little whack with a hammer on top, sharp blow that breaks the O-ring seal, and then you can sometimes twist them out without breaking them. Usually they break. So that's your little tip, tech tip, is to just give them a little whack on the top, whether it's got the solenoid.
And what are these doing?
These are just a plug. Normally they have this cylinder shutdown on here, right?
Oh, I see.
So it's got the shutdown solenoid. This deactivates the lifters.
And for the uneducated like me, explain what that is.
It controls the oil flow to the lifter.
Okay.
Okay, so it pressurizes the lifter bore, and when it does that, it lets the lifter collapse. It pushes the pin in.
Okay.
Like I showed you that hole in the lifter earlier.
Yeah.
So it puts pressurized oil in there, pushes the pin in, and the lifter can now collapse, and it won't open the valve.
So your engine will run on 4 cylinders instead of 8.
Correct. It shuts down the cylinders, and on these
And the advantage is?
better fuel economy.
Oh, okay.
that way.
Gotcha.
And the and this is on cylinders 1 and 7, 4 and 6. So on this side we got 1, 7, 4, 6.
So in this case, these are just plugs,
These are just plugs, and they have a standard lifter in there.
and you could pop them out and put in those.
Solenoids.
Other ones.
Or
I gotcha.
Vice versa. If you don't want these, then you can take these solenoids out and
Gotcha.
put in the. Now, here's the catch to that. If you put the plugs in here and you have the MDS lifters in, you're going to collapse the lifter because you don't have the solenoid to keep the oil pressure away from the lifter pin.
It's going to be collapsed all the
It's
time.
going to be collapsed all the time.
You just got yourself
Yeah.
a nice little 4-cylinder.
You got yourself a 4-cylinder. So you do actually have to pull the heads off and replace the lifters if you're going to do that. You can't just pop these out, put the plugs in, and say, all right, I got 8 cylinders all the time. Also, you're going to have to give it a tune, right? So that's a couple of things that we're going to go into, and we'll get into some of the bigger differences as we build these, and also do a side-by-side part comparison, because I have parts from both, and most of it's in the heads and the cam. Like I said, there's a couple differences in the block, and even the piston is actually different. I believe it has the same part number, however, it is the piston rings are thinner on the Eagle engines. So there are some differences between the two, and we'll get into it.
That's a heck of a lot to remember.
Oh yeah, and you'll also notice on the Ram 2500 here, here's our friend, the 45-degree oil filter.
Right.
The Ram 1500 doesn't have that. So this is on the 2500 trucks, on the Jeeps.
I was going to say, was that the same as the Jeep? Because I remember being a real pain in the butt.
Yeah, it's the same as the Jeep, same thing. So 2500 engines, Jeeps, and Durangos, they have that 45-degree filter on.
And that's just a frame thing, is it? Like spacing inside the engine compartment?
Just give you some, compared to that, which is straight down, right?
Yeah, I see what you mean. Much easier to get at when you're changing the oil.
Absolutely. So that's a start of taking a look at this, and even the crankshaft length is different.
Is it?
Yeah. So that's a start to the differences between the engines, and we'll get into some more as we go through them, but I really want to get going on that one, get the cam out of it, and see what we've got happening with it. And we'll see if we can put one together. We have a spare cam, but maybe we might want to play with that a little bit, Mike. I don't know. What do you think?
Like put in a beefed up cam?
Yeah, we might want to put the 6.4 cam in there. Now the advantage of putting a 6.4 cam in there is we can still keep all those advantages I talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
We can have the active intake runners. Now that system, that's okay. That'll work no matter what. What won't work is the cam phasing. If we start getting into some of these radical cams with the higher lift and durations, there's a chance that the valves are going to come down and hit the pistons.
I gotcha.
Okay, so they have what it called a limiter or phaser lockout, so it doesn't allow the cam to index all the way. But I don't like that. I like the 6.4. We can put that in, get a little more performance out of it, but not have to worry about locking out the cam. One thing we will have to do is we'll have to upgrade the valve springs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because
you need the compatible 6.4 valve springs with the new cam.
Else, we can run everything else, but we'll have to upgrade
the lifters and everything will be fine.
Yeah, I think the lifters and stuff will work just fine.
Okay.
So we can bump up the power, or we can just, I do happen to have a spare 5.7 cam, and we can just slide in here and do it on the cheap.
Well, I'll be very curious to see how this cam comes out. That'll be the first time for me, so maybe we should throw this thing on time lapse and get after it.
We could do that, but one other thing that, again, why I was really happy with our auto recycler is he threw in some spark parts for us as well when we picked this up.
Nice.
So we got a nice head gasket here. Look at that Mopar, genuine Mopar.
Genuine parts. Nice.
We got the
OEM, as they say.
Yeah, OEM, and there again is the new seals for the valve cover.
As our young friends from Tennessee would say.
Yeah. OEM, yeah. There's the timing cover seal right there. And whoa, one other thing now. Let's look at this. We got some cylinder head bolts here.
Oh yeah, you had a little story about this, didn't you?
I do have a story about these cylinder head bolts. Okay. Now, I'll show you the ones that aren't open. I've got one right here. So there's the big bolt.
Yes, that is big.
That goes under the valve cover. And here's the smaller ones, which they go right here.
Gotcha.
Okay. Now, these bolts, some people think these are torque to yield. They are not. They are torque to angle or torque to turn. So what does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean?
Well, on a torque to yield, actually, I'll keep that bolt up. I explain this in one of my other videos, and I can put a link up, and you can click on that.
Yeah, we'll put a link up, and it's at, what, 25:30?
Yeah, it's at
25 minutes, 30
time
seconds.
index 25:30 around there on episode 4, where I'm working on that Hemi Sport truck.
Okay.
So we'll put a link up to that video so you can see that, but I'll explain it briefly. So a torque to yield bolt, what happens is it stretches in the shank area here, right in this area, and you can actually see it. You'll see a taper when you pull these out. The LS bolts have torque to yield bolts. The Hemis have torque to turn.
Okay.
So that means they don't hit their yield. They don't stretch to the point where they can't return. They don't
Oh,
go
I
past
see.
their elasticity point.
Okay.
Okay, they maybe go up to about 80% of their yield strength. So these can be reused. Now, if you don't want to reuse them, that's fine too, because you can buy a set of bolts like this. You can get both sides for about, I think, $50. So it's not that much money. So if you're really not comfortable, you go buy some new ones. I have reused these multiple times, never had a problem. So, but you have to inspect them, because
Right.
some of them might not be, some of them might stretch or crack or have bad threads or whatever. So you got to take a look at them and make sure that they're good, but you can reuse them. A little viewer tip. The other thing is, let's take a look at the push rods. You'll notice something here.
I do.
Two different lengths, right? One's intake, one's exhaust. So you got to be careful when you put these back together.
Now, is that typical on normal engines?
Yeah,
Most engines?
most engines have same length push rods.
Right.
The Hemis don't, because of the way they're configured. And it's kind of because they sit kind of like this when they come through the head.
Oh, they don't sit facing the
Right.
same angle.
So one goes to the back rocker shafts, one goes to the top rocker shafts, but we'll get into that once we get in the engine. Also, again, you can go to that episode where I take the truck apart and you can see it, but we'll go specifically into that in this as well. We'll go into a fair bit of detail.
Good.
But let's give it a shot. Let's get this part, see what we're dealing with.
All right. See you on the next video.